point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 550th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh, but not in the studio.
Right.
We do news relating to energy and climate change every week, almost every week. And so we start with each show on a Thursday. And what we start with is the news starting with the previous Thursday and coming up to the Wednesday. So
what we're starting on today is November 20th.
That's right, and we will finish with November 29th, today being the 30th. And this is material that comes from my blog, geoharvey.com. You can go there, click on the calendar for the date, and find the individual items that we talk about. Each date has usually 15 news items. Alternatively, you can go to the internet site that Tom and I use to make the show, so you don't have to fish through 15 items to find one. And that site has a link to it farther down on the screen for people who are using computers that can go to things. Obviously, a person who's watching this on cable television might not have that. But anyway, we're starting on the 20th of November, with the 20th of November, with a picture of ice, a block of ice. Imagine that.
Funny looking block of ice, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it's very big, though. I get the sense that that's pretty small.
I think I agree with you there.
Yeah. This is from CNN. Got the title, Tom?
The world briefly smashed through the 2-degree warming limit for the first time ever.
Yeah, the world's temperature.
CNN, by the way.
Yeah, the Earth's temperature briefly rose above the crucial threshold that scientists have been warning for decades could have catastrophic and irreversible impacts on the planet and its ecosystems, according to data shared by a climate scientist. Now, that's just a briefly going through that 2-degree limit, and then it fell back.
But we did it, and it's not good news.
No, this is not good news. And, you know, we've been seeing this all year, last year too. Things are just getting worse and worse, and they will continue to do that. So, I don't know. Do you have more to say on that?
No, we can go on.
Okay, our next image is a transonic truss-braced wing X-66A. And that's it. That is an experimental plane. This news item comes from Clean Technica.
The wings are pretty small. The engine's pretty big, so I guess they need additional support for the wings.
Well, that's why they have a truss-braced. It's almost like a biplane, except that the lower wing and the upper wing are connected. So that gives them support for that connection. But this thing is supposed to go above the speed of sound, so it's got
transonic. That means right through the speed of sound.
That's right, and that you can tell by looking at it is designed with the idea that it's going to be a passenger jet, although it's an Air Force jet. What do you have for title?
U.S. Air Force approves new green aircraft demonstrator project.
Yeah, new green aircraft demonstrator. The U.S. Air Force conferred X-plane status on a green aircraft demonstrator project aimed at reducing fuel use by 30%. Spearheaded by Boeing, and I always wanted to call that Boeing when I was a kid,
Boing, boing.
Yeah, right. And NASA, it is the first Air Force designed X-plane to focus on sustainability since the program began in the 1940s. Do you remember the X-2 and the X-10?
Not really.
I remember seeing them on television when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
I think one of them crashed, but you know, that's what happens when you're a jet pilot or something. So, do you have more on that?
Now let's move on.
Okay. Whoops.
Tuesday, November 21st already.
Tuesday, November 21st, and we have a picture of an offshore wind farm. And
That's what they tell us it is. It is an awful lot. Turbines.
There are a lot of turbines there, and that is not off the coast of Rhode Island. But I forget where that came from, but the article is from Clean Technica.
Revolution Wind is the company.
Yeah.
Begins construction of offshore wind farm in the Rhode Island Sound.
Yep. Offshore wind projects along the Atlantic coast have suffered setbacks recently, particularly in New Jersey. But things are different in Rhode Island. Revolution Wind celebrated starting construction of a large offshore wind farm in Rhode Island Sound. Now, this wind farm has got 60-some wind turbines, and the one that they put up was 13 megawatts. And a 13-megawatt turbine
Pretty good price.
I think that one turbine would probably power Brattleboro, running at full speed. And I read into this and what I found was that the people who put together Revolution Wind, one of the things that they did was they contracted for all the parts of this wind farm some time ago.
Uh-huh.
So when there was when there was inflation, they didn't have to worry about the inflationary tendencies because they had already contracted for the parts. So, and these parts, you know, some of them, I think I'm 77 years old. I don't know how many years I worked, 50 years, whatever. And I don't think I've made enough money in all that time to buy a single generator for a wind turbine.
I don't think so either.
Probably not, you know. And here I am, you know, I'm worth billions of dollars, as you know, Tom. I was just waiting for you to laugh. But they had contracted for all the parts, so the increased costs of inflation and so forth were distributed among a large number of companies, and they apparently don't have a problem, so they're just going ahead building this stuff. And the fact of the matter is, we'll talk more about this. The fact of the matter is that the sites that where the companies have found that it's cheaper to buy their way out of the contract, they're doing that. But that doesn't mean that the wind farm is not going to be put in. It just means that it's going to be put in at a somewhat higher price and
different conditions.
Yeah, possibly by a different company. And quite frankly, the way things go, I would expect that the prices of the wind turbines that are going into these wind farms is going to go down again. It's not going to stay high.
Uh-huh.
And the reason I say that is because Wright's Law says it's going to happen, and Wright's Law is recognized as a law of economics. So, you want to go on?
Let's move on.
Here we have a storm.
Looks like it to me.
Yeah, but that's a storm over a city in Brazil. And this particular item that we're going to be talking about, I'm going to have to give an apology over because I said something last week, and we had an item last week which happened to have some wrong information in it. So what do you have? This is from BBC. What do you have for a title?
Brazil records its highest ever temperature.
Right. Brazil has recorded its hottest ever temperature, 44.8 degrees Celsius, which is 112.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's pretty hot.
That's pretty hot, as parts of the country endure a stifling heat wave. The record was set on Sunday in a town in Brazil's southeastern state of Minas Gerais, and I probably am not pronouncing that properly, and I apologize. Now, what happened last week was that I broke one of my own rules, which is don't believe it until you've actually checked.
Checked it out, yep.
I didn't check, and you might remember that I said that there was a high temperature in Rio de Janeiro, which was 16 degrees Celsius higher than anything that had ever come before. And I should have just looked at that and said, no, that's not possible. And the reason why it was possible was because the number was wrong.
Uh-huh.
And I looked at this and tried to find out, and I couldn't find that I had made a mistake aside from believing something that I shouldn't have believed. That was certainly a mistake. I tried to figure out how I could have transcribed that number wrong. I looked at the original article, and it didn't say that it was updated, but it didn't have the number. And these numbers I usually copy. I highlight them and copy them, so I get exactly the same thing. But, you know, we said that this was just an astonishing high temperature, and it wasn't. It was a high temperature in Rio de Janeiro, but it wasn't.
It's still pretty hot, baby.
It was pretty hot. And this, 112.6 degrees, you'd think that things could get hotter in Brazil because it's a big country. There's lots of places to record data. But I've seen temperatures that high in Illinois when I was a kid.
112 degrees?
112 degrees. The hottest temperature record in Illinois was set, I think, in July of 1953. And I remember that very, very well. The hottest temperature was set in East St. Louis, which is, of course, on the Mississippi River. And I was a couple hundred miles from there, maybe. But we were in a community that was 35 miles west of Chicago. But the temperature at our house on our thermometer said 117 degrees. And that was not in the sun, that was in the shade. It was on the north side of the house. And I went to get some milk because the milk would be in the refrigerator. And I would get something cold to drink, and the milk was warm. And, it was just the refrigerators in those days were not as efficient as they are today. And, it was just unbelievable. And I remember saying to my mother, do you have any idea what the temperature is? I'm looking, I was looking at the thermometer, and she said, don't tell me. So naturally I did. And she was very unhappy about that. That was in that part of the world, when the house that I was in was built, they had the technology to build air conditioners, but they didn't do it. They had it would have been far too expensive. So we were in a big house. Some people called it a mansion. It was not a mansion, but it was a big house. And it was a very comfortable house. And the house had two screened-in porches that were, I think, probably 50 feet long. And
sounds like a big house to me.
yeah, close to 20 feet wide. And one of the porches was above the other. And the reason there were two porches was so people could sleep out on a screened-in porch instead of inside when it was just too hot.
Makes sense.
That's the way things were. That house was a stop, I was told, on the Underground Railroad.
Uh-huh.
I used to go down to the basement to see if I could find out where the tracks had been. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, November 22nd.
An interesting picture of some oil slick on water.
You're pretty close to this oil slick in this picture. You can the reason in the right side of the picture on the bottom half, if you look at that, you can kind of see that this has got oil coming up steadily enough that it's spreading out, but it's above the water level. So this picture was taken very close to the oil.
So it's bubbling up.
Yeah. This is from ABC News.
Search for pipeline leak after as much as 1.1 million gallons of oil sullies the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, that's bad. As much as 1.1 million gallons of oil may have been discharged into the Gulf of Mexico from a pipeline system off Louisiana's southeast coast, according to the U.S. Coast Guard. The exact location of the leak is as yet unknown. Now, 1.1...
The pipeline's there and it's leaking.
Yeah, there's something. We don't know. It could be a oil well that wasn't capped properly. It could, there's a lot of different things that it could be, because the Gulf of Mexico has been messed over by oil exploration and oil pipelines and oil wells and so forth.
Yeah, there's a lot of nonsense down there.
Yeah, and 1.1 million gallons. I have read that a pint of oil, which of course is an eighth of a gallon, so this is 8.8 million pints. A pint of oil will pollute 5,000 gallons of water. So this is
significant.
This is significant. There's no question about it. It's not like some of the horrible leaks that we've had in over the course of history, but it's not good. Okay, move on.
Move on. Can't see it.
Okay, we have a picture of a zero emissions ferry.
Couldn't prove that by me.
This, by the way, I've seen pictures of this guy from other angles, and you can actually tell by looking at the picture and looking at the stern of this thing, this is a catamaran.
Aha.
So, just that's why there's two wakes. And this is from Clean Technica.
New zero emissions ferry for San Francisco Bay.
Yep. Switch Maritime manufactured a zero emissions 75 passenger ferry. The company's CEO, Pace Raleigh, provided many details about the new vessel for Clean Technica. It is to have hydrogen fuel cells, hydrogen storage tanks, an electric propulsion system, and a lithium-ion battery system.
So this is state-of-the-art, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. The thing that's happening here is they're using fuel cells to combine hydrogen in tanks with oxygen in the air to make electricity to drive the thing. But they have lithium-ion battery for backup, I believe. I think that's probably how that works. So that if anything goes wrong with a hydrogen system, they're not sitting out in the middle of the bay bobbing around.
They got a backup.
They have a backup, that's right. So do you have more to say about that?
No, well, let's move on.
Okay, we have...
Of some ice.
A picture of the Pastoruri Glacier.
Glacier.
And that is in Peru. That glacier is in Peru.
Peru has lost more than half of its glacier surface.
Yeah, Peru lost more than half of its glacier surface in the last 6 decades. 175 glaciers became extinct due to climate change between 2016 and 2020, according to scientists from the state agency that studies glaciers.
So the glacier becoming extinct means it's not there anymore.
Not exactly, Tom. I'll explain that in a minute. Peru's glaciers cover only 44% of the land they did when the first inventory was done in 1962. The thing about glaciers is a glacier is not merely a big pile of snow and ice. It's a big pile of snow and ice that moves. And
like a floating island.
What?
Like a floating island.
It moves like a river. Very slowly. The ice is pushing, the weight of the ice at a higher elevation is pushing the ice at a lower elevation along. And it stops being a glacier when there isn't enough weight in it to cause it to move. So there's still snow and ice there, but it's not a glacier anymore. And then, of course, with no motion, it will eventually stop being snow and ice too, which is one of the things that's happening. And in Chile, they have, the Chile has lost almost 100% of its glaciers. And we've talked about that in the past, a number of years ago, quite a number of years ago. So, okay.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. We have a picture of blue oval city factory construction. And what do you suppose that means? This is
I don't know. It looks to me like towers for windmills.
Yeah, except if you think about it, wind turbines, the bases of wind turbines are big, like
Yes.
50 feet across compared to this thing. They're putting in vertical pieces for construction of a big factory, and
Inflation Reduction Act drives $92 billion investment in EV production and 84,000 jobs in the USA.
right. And this is from Clean Technica. And by the way, I will refer back to this article in a few minutes. The Inflation Reduction Act has been an enormous stimulus for the EV sector in the US. It is underrated and under-acknowledged for how it has brought about manufacturing and mining jobs to the US, not to mention the many jobs it has retained. And
So this Inflation Reduction Act is Biden's thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And what is meant by the many jobs retained is the auto workers, for example, might have lost jobs, but they're keeping them because the factories are being switched over for EV production.
Making different things.
Yeah, I have a note.
Whatever, making different stuff.
Yeah. I have a note attached to this article, by the way, which says this might need reloading 3 or 4 times. And the reason I put that in is because something is not right about, Clean Technica changed the structure of its website to some degree. And they are getting better about this, but it's not all better yet. But I would click on something and nothing would happen. And then I'd click on reload and nothing would happen. Then I'd click again and it would come up with a blue screen, but it isn't the famous blue screen. It's a screen that's blue because it's completely covered with a photograph of solar panels. Yeah, solar panels. And then click on reload again and I get the story. The thing is, that's what happens when I use the computer that I use at home for writing the blog or writing articles or things like that, which is really an older computer. It's good enough to do what I want to do, and this is the only website that I have trouble. But if I use this computer that's sitting in front of me now, it just loads it. I don't have a problem. And it has something to do with the version of Chrome that I'm using as a browser, and possibly the version of Windows that I'm using. I don't know, but I have several computers that I use, and it happens that the one that I use for doing my blog, this doesn't, it works badly for right now. And so if people have that trouble with anything at Clean Technica, I would just say reload it. If you do that 2 or 3 or 4 times, you'll get to it. Okay, we're up to Friday, November 24th, and we have a picture of a sea turtle.
Looks like a turtle to me. That's not a bird.
That's not a bird. This is a cute animal, I think, but I don't think I'd want to try to play with it. I have a feeling that cute animal could take a big enough chunk out of me that
Well, it looks like it's got a pretty vicious snout there.
it sure does. And this is from ABC News.
Sea turtle nests break records on U.S. beaches.
Good news.
Global warming threatens their survival.
Bad news. Just as they have for millions of years, sea turtles by the thousands crawl from the ocean of the U.S. to U.S. beaches to lay their eggs. This year, record nesting was found in Florida and elsewhere, despite growing concern about threats from climate change. These turtles are going to have to move to different locations as climate change changes the beaches, in some cases makes them disappear. And they also have a problem that is probably not unique to turtles, but it's not a problem that you would think of. And that is that a particular egg is going to produce a male or a female, not based on the chromosomes or anything like that, but based on the temperature at which it incubates.
Is that so?
Yeah. And what happens is that if the temperature is higher, then the egg turns out to be female. And if it's lower, then you have a male. And
That's interesting.
the trick here is you want a fair number of both, which means that the sea turtle has got to kind of carefully gauge where those eggs are going. And, you know, they're going to be buried in sand. The lower level is going to be male, the upper level is going to be female. But with climate change, what they're discovering is that you tend to have nests in which almost all, or even all, of the eggs produce females. So you have an overabundance of females. And that is not the ideal way to have things happen. So I don't know how that's going to work out.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, we are going to a picture of...
The picture canal.
It's a picture of a canal with and we may actually have had this picture before.
Well, we've talked about this before. It's a good idea.
Certainly have done that. This is from a publication called New Atlas.
Arizona Solar Canal Project aims to save water while making power.
Yeah, with most of Arizona in a state of moderate to extreme drought, the Gila River Indian Community, that's spelled Gila, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have signed a deal to begin a solar over canal project. So this is no longer just a theoretical thing that people have drawn pictures of. Like the thing in the picture here is a rendering. It is designed to reduce evaporation and boost efficiency of the solar panels. So by doing this, you get two results. One of them is that you have more water, and the other of which is that you have more electricity.
Makes sense to me. I mean, it's two streams.
Yeah, absolutely.
Two income streams.
That's right. That is right. So I will go ahead unless you have other comments on that, Tom.
Let's move on.
Okay.
Saturday, November 25th already.
Oh, yes. Thank you. We have a picture here of a solar array. Let me get that up. Okay. And
Like that to me.
this is from a publication called Living on Earth.
Debunking solar PV fears.
Yeah. As numbers of PV installation modules have risen, some people have raised concerns about the materials they're made from, and they promote disinformation about the safety of recycling modules, among other things. A team at the National Renewable Energy Lab in Colorado clarified this waste from solar panels and published an essay in the journal Nature Physics. So
they're inciting fear.
Yeah, this is something that happens, and it's, this is something that I've observed. Every place where there's a viable solution for dealing with climate change, it gets attacked by a grassroots organization. And in some cases,
Grassroots organizations in quotes, isn't it?
yeah, it sure is. It is a grassroots organization of sorts. I mean, there was one in New Mexico a number of years ago where somebody looked into it. They were attacking the idea of solar PVs on rooftops and saying that they would raise electricity prices for everybody else, everybody who didn't have a solar array on the roof. And nobody could come up with any study or article that was, promoted a truthful examination of the situation. They just said,
pulled it out of thin air because it suited them.
Yeah, they just said that was the way that it was going to be. Somebody decided to look into who the members of this organization were, and they had a right to know.
That's interesting.
And they found that
Who were they?
almost 100% of the members were utility workers who, of course, felt threatened by solar panels.
Moving right along.
You don't want to dwell on that, huh? Okay, our next item. This is a nice picture, I think.
This is a nice picture, yes.
Some people might think I am a little weird for saying that I like this. Peatland? Who cares about peatland? Drain the swamp. Okay, and this is from the BBC. And Tom, how do you pronounce Haugghey?
I would pronounce it as Harvey.
Harvey. Okay. I will allow you to pronounce it that way, and I will assume that you're right. The reason I ask is because you've been in Ireland, and Harvey's Bog is in Ireland. So.
Yeah, it's in Northern Ireland.
It's in Northern Ireland, yeah, which is actually part of Ireland, if you go by what's
part of
on the island
of Ireland, but it's part of the country of the UK.
Yeah, and I'm going to refrain from saying anything about how much I like or dislike that. Okay, what do you have for a title?
Harvey's Bog. Why are peatlands important?
Right. Harvey's Bog in County Tyrone is the latest peatland in Northern Ireland to begin the journey to restoration. Peatlands cover 12% of the land in Northern Ireland, but 86% of the peatlands there are in a degraded state. Instead of storing carbon dioxide, they emit it.
That's supposed to work that way.
Not supposed to. Restoration is vitally important. Now, one of the things about these peatlands is that a peatland is far more efficient in storing, if it's in good condition, it's far more efficient in storing carbon dioxide than forest is, believe it or not.
I can believe that.
What happens in the peatlands
it's still vegetation.
It's vegetation, but you know, this water surface vegetation grows at an astonishing rate. Do you know what is the name of that little plant? If you go across water, if you come across a pond or something, and it's just a very vibrant green in the summer. I'm blanking out on the name of the vegetation, but it's
I can't think of it either. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, it's a little vegetation, and it looks like you would think that it would be some sort of cyanobacteria or something like that would be slimy. But when you get up close, you discover it's a plant with tiny leaves. And
it's a kind of seaweed.
No, it isn't actually. The leaves are above water, but they float. And this particular, if you have an acre of water, and you throw in a teaspoon of these things in the early summer, they'll take over the entire acre in just a few weeks.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, and there are a number of things that do that. Okay, should we go on, Tom?
It is.
Okay, and now we have
Sunday, November 26th.
Thank you. We have pictures of solar panels and trees. And
They seem to go well together.
yeah, they do. The trees are not near the solar panels, so they don't shade them. This is from WION, and I would assume that that is a TV station, but it might be radio.
Sounds like a radio or a TV station.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what do you got for a title?
Installing solar panels is more eco-friendly than planting trees. How about that?
Yeah. A study published in the journal Environmental Science and Technology has revealed that if land use is taken into account, installing more solar panels or investing in solar energy is more climate efficient than planting trees on the same property.
That's interesting.
Yeah, isn't it? And I don't know that that's something that is forever the case. When you plant a tree, it absorbs very little carbon dioxide until it gets to be sizable. Little trees are, as fast as they grow, they don't take down a lot of carbon dioxide. But not yet.
Wait, more mature.
When they get more mature, they'll draw down a lot of carbon dioxide. And in fact, some plants will draw down incredible amounts of carbon dioxide very fast. And one of those is one of those giant bamboos. I had a biology teacher when I was in college who showed a picture of a bamboo plant that kind of was above a cabin that he lived in Panama, in the Panama Canal Zone during the Second World War. And he had been hired by the US government, possibly by one military organization or another, to identify plant species that grew very fast that could be used to camouflage things. And just for the fun of it, he planted this bamboo. And he said it had grown at a constant rate from the time it sprouted of 1 inch per hour. And
wow, you can almost see it grow.
yeah, this is 24 inches a day, 2 feet every day.
Wow.
For 2 months. So the thing was 120 feet tall, and it had only been planted 2 months before. And I got to tell you, that's a lot of carbon being taken out of the air.
Okay. I would say.
All right, so we should go to our next story, which...
Oh, we got a nice picture there where it says, and I quote, "We're free from fossil fuels."
Yeah, and this is from Media India Group.
Phase out of fossil fuels and finance for the global south, a must for renewables.
Yes, and for renewables target, and this is according to 350.org. As the world gears up for COP28, which is starting today as we're talking, environmental group 350.org has called for a comprehensive package that includes a phase out of fossil fuels and a finance package for the global south to increase global renewable capacity. Now, global south is a term that I was unfamiliar with until recently. I mean, that was not something that I saw when I was younger. But basically it means undeveloped or somewhat developed countries. And one of the things that people have to recognize is that everybody has to get through this climate crisis or we won't get through it. This is not something that we in the United States can deal with by ourselves.
Well, we've become addicted to fossil fuels, and that's bad news for everybody.
Yeah, that's right. But, people who drive, I mean, if you go to some parts of the world, they're importing cars from the United States and Europe that are 10 years old and selling them actively on the market. That means internal combustion machines are being imported into the global south countries. And that means that the use of internal combustion engines is spreading in those countries. And we have to do something about that, or we're going to have too much carbon dioxide going into the air.
Yeah.
So we have to deal with that. Okay, ongoing.
Moving right along, Monday, November 27th.
Thank you again.
Things there. What are those things?
What are those things? I don't know, Tom. What do you think they are?
They look like windmills to me.
Yeah, well, windmill, wind turbine, pretty much the same thing. The Messenger is the source of this. What do you have for title?
The Turkish rich are losing the battle to keep wind power out of their backyards.
Well, they're not trying to keep wind power out of their backyards. They're trying to keep it out of their view of the ocean, which is not their backyard. But a raft of lawsuits from residents and fishing industry groups complain about everything from marine life hazards to obstructed views. But Avangrid completed the first of 62 giant turbines last month, promising power to over 400,000 homes and businesses. Pardon me.
They're pretty big turbines.
That's the turbine that we had earlier, where they were putting up these turbines that they ordered and are putting in. And by the way, this item comes from a publication called The Messenger. The turbines are 13 megawatts. They're big turbines. They are, you know, I mean, if you put the nacelle down in a vacant lot and put planks over the front of it and a door in it, it could be somebody's house. You know, I mean, really, a two-story house. These are big. So there is that. And I guess we should go on.
Moving right along.
And we have a picture of a PV plant in Victoria. Where is Victoria? Well, it's a state in Australia. And this is from energystorage.news.
The biggest energy policy change, 32 gigawatt CFDS, what? Could put Australia back on track for 2030 climate change.
Yeah, CFDS is contracts for difference, which means basically it's a gimmick that they use in some parts of the world to encourage or incentivize renewable energy. The Australian government's start of a competitive contract for difference tenders and dispatchable renewable energy capacity with backup by battery energy storage systems is an unprecedented step for national energy policy.
Well, it's a move in the right direction.
It's a move in the right direction, and the Australians have been having trouble. They've been having huge announcements of wind power, solar power, batteries, all this stuff is going in. And big companies are announcing that they're going to do this, and then you don't hear about it after that because they aren't doing it. And or I should say, the states are looking for contracts. And, you know, in some cases, renewable energy contracts go up for bid, and nobody is interested because the contract for difference isn't going to be big enough.
Yeah, there's not enough profit in it.
That's right. Let's go to Tuesday, November 28th. What do you say to that idea?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, we have a picture, believe it or not, of Vermont.
That's what it says it is. Couldn't prove it by me.
I look at this, I don't think Vermont. I think someplace else. Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, North
Upstate
Carolina.
New York.
You know, possibly. You know, the idea of Vermont having blue mountains, that's not what comes into my mind. This is from the Rutland Herald, and apparently that actually is Vermont. Pretty picture.
Yeah, I can believe that.
What do you have for a title?
Energy.
Would you read that title again, please?
Moving energy.
2 words. Okay. The renewable energy future starts with political leadership. Once a leader in New England in the energy transition off fossil fuels, Vermont is now the only state in the region to not have updated its renewables requirement in the last 8 years, as the reality of the costs of the climate crisis have sunk in.
I'm not sure I understand what that says.
What that's saying is 8 years ago, Vermont was a leader It isn't anymore. It's actually behind everybody else.
Okay.
Now,
Not good news.
what?
It's not good news. We can do better.
We can do better. And why aren't we doing better? I'll let you guess. Okay?
It's sort of like the letter S with a few lines through it.
Yeah, it has to do with that, and it has to do with who's paying for political campaigns. But I can tell you, it isn't because of the leadership of the politicians that we've elected from Windham County. I can tell you that. Not in the legislature. It might have something to do with the governor. I don't know. Okay?
Let's move on.
Let's move along. This is a weird picture.
It is weird.
And it is I don't know that that's really, it says it's a screenshot, but I don't know if it's really a screenshot or if it's something that somebody put together, which is a compilation of screenshots.
Well, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, this is from Clean Technica. So, what do you have?
It says YouTube's loaded with EV disinformation.
Right. YouTube seems to be full of anti-EV material. One popular channel has several very similar videos about different manufacturers supposedly giving up entirely on EVs. There was a number of straight-out lies and blatant misinformation in the video, and this is not the only channel like this. Now, I actually watched one of the EVs. Did you watch any of these, Tom?
No.
I didn't think you would. It's kind of inconvenient. But I watched a video, and I could see that it was put together in such a way that it really didn't have, I'm going to put that picture back up. It really didn't have anything specific to do with the people who are in this picture. For example, the picture in the upper left-hand corner is supposedly, I think, the CEO of Toyota with a statement, "It's over." And skipping over, and the next one says it's a scam, and I think that is the CEO of Stellantis. And then you've got Mary
These are
Barra.
not important people.
Yeah, you've got Mary Barra, who is the CEO of General Motors, and she says it's over. Notice that it's a repeat of the same title as the first one. And Mary Barra also says no more EVs, and on the second line of things, and we had no choice in the third line. And you'll see that these things have got the same titles and different people giving them. And when I watched it, I could see that the content of the video could really have been just moved from one video to another. It probably was, all of it. Just take little bits and put them together in different orders, and have some person in the background who is not the person who was at the beginning of it.
Well, the title of the article says basically that.
Yeah.
YouTube is loaded with EV disinformation.
Right, and a lot of it was simple, flat-out lies. So what do you do with that? Well, I don't know. One thing that you have to do is filter this stuff internally, because it's lies. It's just lies. And these companies, with the exception of Toyota, which never really got into EVs very much to begin with, they were spending all their time trying to promote hydrogen and fuel cell cars. And I don't think they've been very successful with that. And I think they're moving to EVs now. But the other companies are working on EVs. They're not giving up. And these people who put this thing up are just giving disinformation. They're giving bad information. And, I think they put up different things so a person could pick it, one of this and one of that, and put them up at their links to them at their website. And,
there's a word for that. It's called propaganda.
Yeah, that's what the title of the thing is. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, November 19th. And we have a picture of truck.
Looks like a truck to me.
And it looks like it might be driving through the Great Plains or someplace. Southern California, in an area where there aren't many mountains around. I don't know. But it's a tractor trailer, and the article is from Clean Technica.
New Biden rule requires states to track CO2 emissions.
Yes.
That's not bad.
What's that?
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, last week the Biden administration finalized a rule requiring states to track greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles. The new rule requires each state's Department of Transportation to establish declining carbon emission targets using fuel sales, fuel efficiency, and vehicle miles traveled data. So basically what they're doing is they're telling the states that it is the responsibility of the states, not just the federal government, but the states also, to keep track of the information. And naturally, you can expect some states' governments are going to be very unhappy about this.
Well, there are vested interests in stranded assets that they're concerned with.
Yeah, well, you know, we have a problem in this country, and the problem is that corporations are considered persons, so they have freedom of speech. And given freedom of speech, they're allowed to promote the interests of legislators who become dependent on them. It's like an open bribe, but since it isn't a quid pro quo, there's a kind of a secret quid pro quo, but it's open, you know, and it's like, all right, my company supports you in the legislature, so we expect you to support us with your votes. And this has really skewed the marketplace and the place where people, you know, it's skewed legislation. And you know what it's done for me, Tom? It's mainly, I am against capital punishment. And the reason I'm against capital punishment is pretty simple. It's because if we engage in capital punishment, we are teaching people or affirming to people that it is okay to kill people under certain circumstances.
Yeah.
Now, it's not a very big step from there to say, well, the state doesn't understand my private reasons, so I'm going to, you know, regard this as something that I'm allowed to do, which is absolutely wrong.
But you can't do it. I can do it.
Yeah, there you go. And so I've just said, well, we shouldn't have capital punishment. We just shouldn't. But I've decided that we should have capital punishment after all, when the person being executed is a corporate person.
That's an interesting concept.
And I have the idea that maybe if a corporation does something wrong, like commits a felony, and because they have committed a felony, somebody dies, like of air pollution, that corporation should face prosecution for murder. And if they are found guilty, they should be put out of existence, and in such a way that their shareholders don't get compensated, because the shareholders have put their money into a corporation that's doing illegal things. And that means that the assets of that company should go into the public trust.
Interesting concept.
It's a concept, but you know, I have to repeat, I don't believe in killing people, but I don't think those corporations are really people. And I think that if we had that idea in action, they would stop pretending to be people. Okay.
Who was it that first said corporations are people?
Oh, that came out of the Supreme. Actually, it's a very old concept from the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it was the Supreme Court, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And it had to do with building bridges. And that's as much as I remember about it. Okay, we have a last piece, which is from Clean Technica.
Yes, yes.
And we have an EV charging. And
this is an interesting thing. It's a carport, and it's refilling your battery.
Yeah. And you're missing something really important there, Tom, and it's the thing that I just had to put this in because of this one little thing. Why don't you read the title?
Beam Global is ramping up rollout of its off-grid solar-powered EV charging infrastructure.
Okay.
What does that say?
The thing that caught my eye here is that this is off-grid. That charging infrastructure is not attached to the grid.
No, it's just isolated.
And it's
he pulls
not
into his place, he recharges his car, and he goes home and has supper.
Yeah, but in this particular case, Beam Global is putting these things in close to the grid. I mean, the grid could be passing within feet of this particular charge port, but Beam Global is not attaching to the grid. Why?
Right.
Because it costs too much to attach to the grid, which happens to be only a few feet away. Why? Well, let me read the synopsis. Beam Global came into being because charging stations have big enough power needs that new power lines have to be put in even where utility power is nearby. It can be cheaper to put in a battery system for a solar-powered charging station than to connect to the grid. Because
it can be.
To connect to the grid, you have to put in grid infrastructure that is hefty enough to be able to cover the power demands of this charging station. And that is fascinating to me. The grid is right there, but they aren't connecting. And there's a business plan supporting this. The grid is right there, and their business plan is don't connect to it.
Well, the grid as we know it is definitely changing.
It's definitely changing. That's right. And you know, this ties in with things like gigawatts, many gigawatts of renewable energy projects are being tied up by the fact that the transmission infrastructure to distribute their power is not available and has to be put in. And there's huge opposition to that. Well, yeah, there's opposition to everything that is everything that competes with fossil fuels has opposition. All right, we're up.
Distributed power is happening.
We're up to our last slide here, which says, have an appealingly convivial week. What does that mean, Tom? Well, it's convivial. That sounds good. It's appealing. That sounds good. Yeah, it sounds good. Okay, I'm going to wave goodbye, and Tom is going to wave goodbye, and Tom is doing it where you can't see it, but I know he's doing it, and I'm always asking him the same question, which is your cat waving goodbye?
No, he's sitting there right now. He's drinking water.
Oh, and he's not
in the
waving.
middle of his noonday meal.
Okay. We're out of time, Tom. Thank you very much.
Good show.
Tell everybody to come back, would you?
Y'all come back now and see us, yeah? Yeah?
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom.